Hello everyone, this is Dave from Dave's Wreaths and Things. We are almost done another year. 2023 is ending, 2024 is right around the corner, and it got me thinking about all of the wreaths I have done this year from January all the way to December, and I thought what a great idea to showcase one wreath per month for a full calendar year. Now today is wreaths of the past and wreaths of the present as well, but it's showcasing 12 wreaths, one for each month. For example, February, I'll showcase a Valentine's Day wreath. And of course, in October, I'll showcase maybe a Thanksgiving and a Halloween one. You never know what you're gonna get. But these are wreaths of the past and present, showcasing one full year of wreaths. Why don't I just get started and I'll show you what I collected. I purchased this grapevine wreath a little while ago at Walmart, and up here in Canada they're $6.97 a piece, and this is an 18-inch grapevine wreath. And the first thing I usually do, like you're seeing me do here, is clean it up a little bit. So for this one, it had a lot of dead leaves in there, a lot of random twigs that I cut off like that one. So I'm basically just going to take a little bit of time, clean it up, give it a couple of bangs, let everything loose fall out, such that when you're carrying it around the house or if it's hanging on your door, all this stuff doesn't fall off. So I just spend a little bit of time in the beginning cleaning off my grapevine wreath before I even start decorating or anything. And now the first part is my bow. So this is 2.5-inch wired ribbon. It's a burlap with this printed scroll on it. It's got red glitter with white little dots all around it. And I'm gonna make a bundle bow. I've heard some people call it a bouquet bow, a bundle bow, a huge ribbon bow, so I just call it a bundle bow. So what I'm doing is I'm going to cut my strips of ribbon to 20 inches. So once I get my 20-inch mark, I'm just going to take my rotary cutter and just cut that down, and I'm going to create a couple of pieces of those. So again, that is 20 inches in length for my ribbon for this bundle or bouquet or whatever you want to call this bow. So there's 5 pieces in total. I'm just going to pile those up, and then I'm going to take a second and different kind of ribbon. So this is kind of like it has an evergreen pattern on it with some berries, and I'm going to cut 4 of them. So we have 9 strips of 20 inches each, and I'm just going to put them in nice neat piles before I start. So I'm going to take my first strip of ribbon, and again it's 20 inches long, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the 12-inch mark. So it doesn't matter which end you're at, but I'm going to find that 12-inch mark, and then I'm going to take that other end and fold it to that mark. So what that's going to do, that's going to create a tail at one side and a loop at the other side. Then you're going to take that, squish the center, make sure you have the little bit of extra there, hold it in place, and there's your loop and your tail, and then stick it in between your 2 fingers and hold on for dear life. No. And we're going to do the same thing again. So I'm going to find my 12-inch mark here, come over the 12 inches, going to mark it, then I'm just going to fold it over, creating a loop, and then I'm going to squish it in the center and put it in between my fingers, and you can already see the top side is the loop and the bottom side are the tails. So one more time for everybody in the back. I'm going to measure over my 12 inches. I'm going to find it, flip it over, creating a loop, and then squish that center and hold it in between my 2 fingers. Now I'm going to do this for all of the ribbon strips there. You'll see me kind of gathering it all together in between those 2 fingers. This is a burlap, so it is rather thick, and my hand was a little bit sore towards the end from holding on for dear life, but it was worth it in the end. And now I have all my loops on one side, all my tails on the other side. I'm going to take my pipe cleaner, and I'm really going to make sure that I have included all my little overlap ribbon as well, just to make sure none of those loops come undone. So I'm just going to twist it around, make sure everything's included in there. You see the little tails at the end at the tops, and I'm going to give it a couple of really good twists just to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. And with this particular ribbon, because it was the burlap, it was very thick, I decided for this, you know what, I think I'm just going to put a twist tie on here just to make sure it doesn't come apart. I don't want that bow coming apart. So what I do is I'm just putting a twist tie right above that pipe cleaner, and I'm going to pull it really tight. I'm just going to use my strength and just yank it tight so those ribbons don't go anywhere. And then I'm going to take apart that pipe cleaner because I don't need it anymore. Get rid of that. And then I have my bow all ready to go with my loops and my tails. And you can fluff it up just a little bit here if you want. And as I'm fluffing it up, I'm thinking, you know what, I think I am going to add dovetails right at the bottom. So I take my scissors, I fold over, and I cut on an angle for each one of my tails, creating that wonderful dovetail look that kind of finishes it off. And once I'm done with that, I just lay apart the tails and I kind of just fluff everything up. And of course I'm going to fluff it up a little bit more once I attach it to my wreath, but right now I just kind of want to see what it looks like, and I'm pretty happy with that. I love how the two ribbons actually go together, that scroll ribbon and that evergreen ribbon. Very nice, very wintry I think as well. And my last step for my bow is I take a long piece of floral wire. This is how I'm going to attach it to the grapevine wreath. So I just wrap it around right at the center where the twist tie is. I give it a couple of good twists on one side, and then I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, give it a couple of good twists and just make sure that's nice and secure. But I'm not going to cut off the extra, because with those extra stems I'm going to wrap that around the grapevine wreath to attach it. And there you have it. Your bundle bow is all ready. Our grapevine wreath is back. My plan is to have the bow here. I'm going to have the greenery coming out on each end, and then I want to see a lot of the grapevine wreath. I'm a fan of grapevine wreaths. I love the look of them. I love having them exposed. So I usually have a lot of my grapevine wreath exposed. And here we go, we're attaching our bow, and all we're going to do is wrap those stems around. Give it quite a few good twists. Make sure that that bow isn't going to go anywhere. Just twist it around a couple of times. I think I do mine maybe 6, 7, or 8 twists just to make sure everything is going to stay in place. And once I finish twisting it around, I'm going to cut off that excess with my scissors, or you can use a wire cutter, whatever you have handy. And I'm going to fold down that little bit that's there, and I'm going to throw a whole bunch of hot glue on there. The reason why I do that, number one, so it stays in place. Number two, so it doesn't scratch up your door. So there's a little tip for you. Especially if this is going to a client or something, if you're making this for a customer, you really don't want that wire scratching up the door. And for me, I'm going to put a whole bunch of glue right at the front because I really don't want that bow to go anywhere. And then I'm just going to hold that in place, put it aside, just to let that dry. And now I'm going to open up my packages of these evergreen flocked floral picks. These I just got at the dollar store. They were, I think it was $1.25 or $1.50 each. I picked up 4 packs. Look at all those little white balls falling all over the place. They went all over the room in my craft studio, I will say that. But I loved how these little packs turned out. I mean, for $1.25, it's not that bad. I got 2 little bundles of these evergreen. I had a little pine cone that had a wire on there. I'm going to take that wire off. It looked like a little eucalyptus leaf as well was attached, and these white berries, which I really loved. I loved these. That's kind of why I picked these florals, because I'm like, oh, I love these berries. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to start really close to the bow and put those evergreens with a whole bunch of hot glue in there, stick it down, and I usually work from the background forward, let's say. So if I want something in the background, I lay it down first, and then I add to it. So you see here, I'm putting those evergreens down first, and then I'm going to be putting the white berries, which are going to go on top of those. So that's what I mean from working from the background forward. And then my last little one, I'm going to put my pine cone on there. And I'm pretty happy with how this is starting to look. I'm going to start working on the other side, and I'm going to do the same process. I'm going to grab those evergreen, put those down first with a whole bunch of hot glue, get those in place, and then I'm going to work on adding that little eucalyptus. Then I'm going to put the berries on, and then my pine cone. And this is looking great so far, but I have 2 more packs, so I thought I'm just going to add those as well. And I start adding all of that on there, doing the same thing, working with my evergreens, then adding the berries. Then at the very end, I'm going to add that pine cone as well. And I just have 1 more pack left to do at the top. I'm going to finish that all off, let that dry a little bit, and guess what? We are done with our winter wreath made from leftover Christmas decor. So what do you think about it? Pass? Fail? Yes? No? I've got my big bundle bow with my floral evergreens here. I just think this is so amazing. I love this wreath and I can't wait to put it on my front door. Here's what I'm going to be using today. So I'm going to be using a whole bunch of natural colored burlap, a wire wreath frame, some acrylic paint, painter's tape. I have a canvas here, it's a stretch canvas, and a little grapevine wreath heart, Chanel stems, and a mask, along with some paintbrushes, water, and I would have a rag handy as well. Don't forget that handy dandy plastic ties, my glue gun and glue sticks. And that's my list for today. So for starters, let's all put on our masks when we wear burlap. Fibers get in the air, causes itchy throats and all that other wonderful stuff. So I usually wear a mask. So to start, I'm going to anchor with this clip tie, and I'm going to be using the inside 2 bars, so 2 wires I should say, and I'm beginning pulling the burlap through the 2 or 3 open spaces. Now I do have other videos. I'm going to link in the top right hand corner 2 ways to do a natural burlap wreath. So if you want to check those out, those go a little bit more into detail. Today I'm going to do a little quick tutorial, but if you want a slower, more in-depth tutorial, then totally go check out that link. So I'm going to start with my anchor as I always do with wreaths, and I'm going to use that crossbar. And I'm just going to attach it down with the plastic tie. And I'm putting the plastic tie in one of the openings, and in the second opening, I'm pulling it through. So I'm having that wire, the crossbar, and the burlap all within that plastic tie. Then I just cut off the excess, and I've just created my anchor. Nice and tight. It's not going anywhere. There you go. See how tight it is? It's not moving anywhere. That is our anchor to start with. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be pushing the top of the burlap and the bottom of the burlap through the openings there, such that the wire lays in between in the middle of the burlap ribbon. Now that is going to create your ruffle. So what I do is I gather with my left, you'll see me doing it here, and I guide it with my right hand. So I'm holding everything in my left, I'm guiding the burlap through, folding it in half around that wire, and then I'm just squishing it all together with my left hand, and that's going to create the ruffles for you. I'll just show you in a little bit. Our ruffles are starting to form here, and of course they are a little bit loose, so I do want to tighten that up a little bit, so I am going to add some more burlap into that one section. So all I do is I just continue with the same process, and then every now and then I just take a look at it, and then I continue on to the next phase, or the next section, I should say, not phase. And then I just go all the way around that inner wreath, and I stop every now and then just to take a look at each section. Is it full enough? Do I need a little bit more? And if I'm happy with it, then I just move on to the next section until I'm all done that first round of my ruffles of my natural burlap wreath. So here I am. I'm done my first round. I'm back to where my anchor is, so back to the starting point. And now I'm going to jump to the second wire. So you'll see there's the second wire that I'm going to go to, and I'm going to feed the ruffles into that. So with the same method we did before, the top portion of your burlap ribbon goes in one section, one opening, and then the bottom we feed through the other opening, and that wire stays right in the middle as we fold the burlap in half. Then I feed with my right hand, and I gather it with my left hand. So there you go. You can see the wires there. It's the second wire in from the edge, and I'm folding the burlap in half with that wire in the middle. So I do the same method all the way around, and here I am. I'm just kind of finishing it off, making sure my burlap's folded in half and that I'm nice and full, and that's going to create your beautiful ruffles. Of course, you can do this with deco mesh as well. Same procedure. I do have a video of that as well. It's how to make a deco mesh wreath 2 different ways with no cutting. I'll link the video up at the top right hand corner if you want to check it out as well. If you ever have the inspiration to try this method with a deco mesh wreath, it is so much fun. Making any wreath is so much fun, let me put it that way. So here I am just doing my final anchor. So it's the exact same method we did before. We are tying it to the crossbar. I'm making sure both those wires are inside the plastic tie with the burlap. I tighten it up, and then I'm just going to chop off the excess. And I have my final anchor, and I'll just chop off the excess of that burlap. Of course, I love burlap. I'm not throwing that away. I'll use that for something else. There we go. So our wreath is all done. I'm just going to fluff it up and take a look at it and see what it looks like. I'm actually really happy with that. And of course, here we go with our reverse canvas painting. And I'm just going to start with my canvas. I'm going to get myself ready with some water, a rag. I'm going to start with my painter's tape. Now for this one, I'm going to do kind of an ombre effect of the colors. So I'm going to have 3 stripes, the bottom color, the darkest, medium color, and then a lighter color. So keep in mind, whenever you're placing tape down, it's going to be, when you take it off, it's going to expose white. So wherever the painter's tape is not covering, that's going to be your colors. So here you go. I'm just starting with my paint, my acrylic paints. I have white and red, nice Valentine's Day colors. And I just do a little bit of, a little blob here and there, just so I'm mixing. It's a little bit easier with everything. So the look that I'm going for this is a little bit of an antique look. So I don't necessarily want to make sure that, for me anyways, for this particular reverse canvas, I don't need it to be 100% perfect in coverage. I want it to be a little bit transparent, a tad bit messy, if you will, because I do want to have this kind of antique looking. So here I am, I'm going to do my second color. I'm just mixing my 2 colors together until I'm happy with the color that I'm going to be painting in the middle row. So I wanted it to be lighter than the bottom color. So here we go. It's a little bit of a darker pink. And I'm also painting the sides because when I take the canvas off to cut it down, I want to make sure I got full coverage. And here for my final color, again, I'm just mixing paint together. And since I want it lighter, I'm obviously adding more white to it. And there you go, my final color. I'm painting all the sides and the top. And then of course, once I'm done with that, I'm just gonna let it dry for a few minutes, few seconds really, and then I'm gonna take the tape off. And I love taking the tape off because it's that reveal. So there you go, my white stripes have been revealed. And then I'm gonna let this fully dry. So I'm gonna let it dry for about maybe a half an hour. Acrylic paints usually don't take that long to dry. And here I am checking it. Yep, it's all dry. So now I can move on. So what I'm gonna do with this is I'm going to antique it a little bit. So make it look a little bit dirty. So I'm taking a paper towel, you can use a rag as well, and dipping it in the water. And then I'm just taking a very little bit of that brown color and I'm just applying it on there. It's almost like a wet brush. The paper towel's a little bit wet. And I'm just doing a very small amount until I get the aesthetic look that I'm looking for here, which is that whole antiqued look. Of course, a friend of mine, Susie, if you haven't seen her channel, her name is Susie Stuff. Totally go check her out. She is phenomenal at doing DIYs and crafts that just make you smile. I'll link her channel up in the top right hand corner. Anyways, her and I were having a conversation about antique versus primitive versus farmhouse. So this is kind of, I guess, a quote unquote primitive look where it looks a little bit antique-y. So that's just a little information for you, but go check out her channel too. So in order to create the reverse canvas, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off the staples all around the back of the stretched canvas. Now underneath there is a wooden frame. So if you haven't worked with it before, there's the wooden frame right there. And once you take the canvas off, you can attach that canvas to the back. And as you see here, I'm demonstrating, that's what my reverse canvas is going to look like. So I don't want this natural color, so I'm going to go back and use that same kind of antiquing effect I did on the canvas, but this time I'm just going to throw some paint on the frame itself, and I'm just going to rub it in with that wet paper towel that I used before. I'm not looking for the perfect coverage. I actually don't want perfection in this one, again, because I want to go back to that antique look or primitive look. That's the new phrase that Susie taught me, is the primitive look. So I do want to have that antique look, that stained look, you know, make it look like this picture's been around for 50 years. So there's the final result that I'm aiming for. And the next step that I'm going to do here is I'm going to cut off that excess canvas. So it's actually lined out for you. You can see where the canvas was lined around or wrapped around the wooden frame. So I'm just going to cut along that line, and that should give me enough canvas for the back. And here I am just testing it out. Yep, that works perfectly. I'm happy with that. All I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it over, good side down, add some glue all the way around. Then I'm going to take that canvas and then face down, because our frame is face down as well, I'm going to place it on top and then just secure it down, hold it in place, make sure it's nice and taut, flip it over, and there we go. And what is our last step? Putting that little grapevine heart-shaped wreath. So I'm just putting dabs of glue down. Then I'm going to place it in the center, and I'm going to wait for everything to dry. So it's all dry, and now I'm just going to put some glue on the back because I want to attach this to my wire frame. So I take some glue and full-size Chanel stems, and then I put a whole bunch of glue on the top as well just to secure it down a little bit. Let that dry, bring my wreath back, and now I'm able to put that reverse canvas onto my finished ruffle wreath. So all I'm going to do is feed it through those wires there. I'm going to wrap it around the two inside wires just to get it nice and secured. I'm going to twist tie it in place, wrap it around, make sure it's nice and secured, flip it over, make sure it's straight, and then I'm gonna lift it up and pull some of those ruffles out so you can still see that beautiful ruffle work. And to be honest, here is where I thought I was going to be finished with this wreath. But as I was kind of looking at it and thinking about it, I stopped the video here. I packed up my studio and everything. Then I was kind of thinking, you know what? Maybe this needs just a little bit more. And I spent maybe a day or two thinking about it. So here I am, I'm back. You can see there's a different background. But I just thought there was something missing here and I needed a little bit of something more. I love the way it looks, don't get me wrong. So I had these little wooden hearts and I thought, maybe I can use these with something. And also, I had these little wooden stickers from the Dollar Tree as well. They were Valentine's themed. So I thought, why don't I use those wooden hearts, these stickers? Let's just play around and see what this looks like. So here I am. I'm just kind of playing around, putting stuff on. Does this work? Does this work? Going back and forth, yes or no? And then, of course, I finally came up with the idea of, you know what? I do like this, and this is exactly what I was looking for. So I glued it all down. It's all dry. Those little hearts just added that extra little oomph that I was looking for, and I'm so happy with it. And I hope you like it as well. I purchased this 14-inch wire wreath frame from the Dollar Tree. And I have 3 different colors of deco mesh that comes from the Shore Living line. So there's a white, a beige, and a tinsel blue, and then a blue. And for each one, I have 2 of each. So that's a total of 6 rolls of deco mesh. Along with the Shoreline Living anchor, I'm going to add this. I don't know how I'm going to do it just yet, but I want to put this on. I also have this nautical rope, and I've got 3 bundles of it. And again, that's just your Shore Living. And as well, these little wooden anchors. I don't know if I'm going to use them or not. And finally, these cute little starfish. They're white, they're pretty, a perfect accent for this beach themed wreath. So that's everything from the Dollar Tree Shore Living line that I'm going to use today. Starting off with a little Wreath 101, this is a 14-inch wire wreath frame. It has 4 wires that go all the way around with anchors every so often all the way around. And there are 6 sections in this entire wreath frame, and we're going to be using the 2 middle wires the entire way around. First, I'm going to start off cutting my deco mesh, and I cut it at 7-inch strips. So you see in the beginning there, I cut it with scissors, but here's a little tip. Find something or make something that's 7 inches long, roll it up like I'm showing you here, cut off the excess, then you just take your scissors, place it in between the mesh and your board, and then just chop right across. And that way, that's going to give you a nice, easy, clean cut of all of your deco mesh all at once. So again, just cut the other side, and then you have all this beautifully cut mesh already. Now this mesh measures 6 inches by 7 inches. So the deco mesh is 6 inches, and I am measuring it 7 inches long. So I do the exact same rolling method with that beige color, and just cut along those lines. Look at how fast and easy that is. And I do the exact same thing with the white. So all in all, I've got all of my bundles cut, and I'm going to grab some pipe cleaners. And I'm just going to chop those pipe cleaners in half. And I usually take about 18, 19 pipe cleaners and cut them in half, because it all depends on how many rolls, or I shouldn't say rolls, or bundles you make. Now for this, I was able to make 136 strips of deco mesh. And for each bundle, I'm going to use 4 pieces of deco mesh. So you see there, just to start off, I did a blue, 2 beige, a white, and I'm going to need my pipe cleaner as well. All you're going to do is you take one of your rolls, and this is easiest to follow the natural curl, and you're just going to curl it up using your fingers. And then what I do is I hold it in between my peace fingers, let's put it that way. I just find the center, hold it in, and hold it down holding that in place. And then I still have two hands free to roll up my second piece. So again, we're just rolling it up, finding my center and putting it in between my two fingers. And again, that third piece, we're going to roll it up, stick it in between my fingers, and do my fourth and final piece, rolling it up and sticking it in between my fingers. When I'm all done with all four, I take my pipe cleaner, find the center, I just drag it along my palm, and then I transfer the deco mesh from my left hand to my right hand, folding it over, and then you just do a couple of twists to hold that in shape, and our first bundle is made. And there you can kind of see it all coming together, all those cute little loops, and then we have a little excess pipe cleaner at the bottom to attach it to the wreath. Why don't we just go through one more time, nice and slowly. So I'm going to take my four pieces of deco mesh again. Doesn't matter, the order or the amount. I just randomly pick four. And then I'm just going to start with my first piece. Using the natural curl of the mesh, I'm just going to roll that up, find that center, place it in between my piece fingers, hold it in place, and then I'm going to roll my second one, find that center, put it in between my fingers. Here's the third one, rolling it, and my fourth and final piece, we're going to roll that as well. Put it in between those fingers, grab that pipe cleaner, slide it along the palm of your hand, transfer the deco mesh from your left hand to your right hand, fold it over, and then a couple of good twists. And that's going to create another bundle. Now, for my wreath, I ended up having 34 bundles. And what I'm going to start to do is 5 bundles per section. And I'm going to use the pipe cleaner extension there at the bottom to attach it to the wreath. So we're going to start by flipping the wreath over, and then the good side is going to face down. How we're going to start is by anchoring the first bundle. So that's going to go on a crossbar along with the 2 inner wires that I'm showing you here. So you just take those 2 pipe cleaners, or the 2 ends of that one pipe cleaner, and then you just make sure that that anchor and 2 wires are in between, and then you just twist it around. Just give it a couple of good twists, and that's going to hold that in place. And as you can see, that doesn't move around at all when you put it on the anchor. Now for the inside bundles, we're just going to use those 2 wires again on the inside. We're going to use the 2 ends from the pipe cleaner. Make sure those 2 wires are inside, and then we're just going to wrap it around. And really, that is the method that we're going to use throughout the entire wreath. So again, per section, I do 5 of these bundles all the way around, and then I do 1 bundle on the anchor and 4 bundles in between each anchor piece, crossbar, if that makes sense. I'll show you in just a second. Here it is. So 1 anchor, 1, 2, 3, 4 in between, and then I'm going to put another one on that anchor, and that's going to be the 5th for that whole section. Of course, at the very end, since I have 34 bundles made, I'm going to have a couple more in between here and there. And then I just do that right at the very end, and I'll show you how I do that as well, just kind of filling it in the blanks. But here you go. I just separate them, and then I have the 2 anchors, and then that is 4 in the middle. And look how nice and full that looks. I love the combination of these colors. It's a perfect combination for the beach theme. So let's just finish off. We'll continue on adding those bundles onto my wire wreath frame. And here you go. I am almost done. I have some left over, like I said. So now all I'm going to do is I'm just going to look around, see where there's some holes. But first, what I like to do is chop off the excess pipe cleaner, and then I'm going to use a little bit of hot glue just to hold it all together. So here you see I've added 5 in the middle of this one, 5 in the middle of this one. There's a hole here, so I'm just going to add an extra one here. I mean, we've made the bundles, so instead of throwing them out, why don't we use them, right? And again, I chop off the excess, add a little hot glue on there just to finish it all off. And then I have my last bundle that I'm attaching in there. And then I'm going to cut that excess off. And I'm going to add a little hot glue. Once that's all done, space them out a little bit. Just make sure they're nicely spaced and evenly spaced. And then the final reveal of our base loop wreath. Look how beautiful that is. Nice and full. We don't see the wire. It's got great color. I love the loops on these. Now it's time to decorate our anchor. So this is just a wooden anchor that I got at the Dollar Tree. Again, it's the Shore Living line. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a couple of base coats on it first. This is just a white acrylic paint. I'm going to paint the entire anchor. And at this point, I was just thinking I'll have a white anchor on there. And then as the project kind of went along, I added more and more detail to it. And you'll see a little bit later on. But here I'm just doing a second coat of that white acrylic paint just to get that anchor going. I mean, you could totally use that plain beige natural wood color anchor. That's totally great. I just decided to use a little bit of the white. And here I am adding dry brushing on some blue paint. And then I decided, you know what? I want to add a little bit more. So I decided to wrap some twine around it. I apologize for the lighting on this section. I don't know what happened. My lighting just went totally wonky for a little bit, but it will correct itself in the end. So I'm just wrapping it around and I'm just hot gluing the ends at the back and cutting off the excess. And I'm just going to do the other side as well, just for a little added bonus to that anchor, just to give it some more interest and some more depth. And I'm going to wrap the bottom section as well using the same twine. And now that it's all done, I'm just going to place that anchor. It's all dry, all ready. And I'm just going to figure out where I want it to go, just kind of place it down. And I know I'm also going to use this nautical rope and these white starfish as well. So now I'm just kind of getting everything ready. And then I finally decide this is where I want the anchor to go. I'm going to hot glue it down. It's very light, so I didn't use pipe cleaners or anything to attach it to the wreath. For me, I needed more detail on the anchor. I just thought there wasn't enough. I wasn't happy with it. And of course, you'll see me do it back and forth a couple of times. So I do add some silver paint to it. And now it's time to try to figure out where I'm going to do this nautical rope. I love the dark navy and the natural rope look together combined with the twists. So I'm going to just start off by looping it through the anchor. I'm going to bring it around back and I'm just going to attach it to my wreath frame just to make sure it doesn't go anywhere, using that hot glue and holding it in place. And once it's dry, I'm just going to flip it back over. And really, all I'm going to do is wrap this around. I have no method of it. I'm just going to wrap it around, see where it goes. I did end up using a couple of the those bundles as well. It was two in total that I used. And at the very end, I just hot glue it down once I'm happy with how it all came together. And I'm just going to cut that excess off. And there we go. I've got my little nautical rope wrapped around. I'm just trying to see if I want more there, but I don't. Because really, that anchor was bothering me. I was like, I don't know what's missing or what's gone on. So what I decided to do was, I'm like, I'm just going to make it silver. So just right on top, I just add a couple coats of the silver, and then I was happier with it. And now I'm just going to add my little starfish on there, just using my hot glue and placing it randomly. I wanted to have a couple on this side and then one on the other side. Just kind of spread them around a little bit. And there you go. Once I looked at it all, I thought, you know what, I'm going to take some acrylic paint. I have a blue, I have a brown, and I have like a beigey taupe color. And I'm just going to play around with the colors of the starfish. So I just basically use a little bit of paint. I mix paint. I try the blue. I try the dark color. I try the taupe. And I'm just playing around with the colors just to kind of get some more interest and a more natural look to those starfish. Of course, if you want to put them on, that's totally cool without painting them. They totally popped on there. I just loved it. And of course, here I am back at the anchor again. So what I decide to do is dry brush the outside with a little bit of black paint. And that gave it some more depth. And I was totally happy with it once that was all completed. So I'm just dry brushing that on there. Of course, you can put that anchor on there white, you can do blue, you can leave it the natural color. It's totally up to you. But here is my shore living from Dollar Tree, nautical beach themed curly wreath. I just love how this turned out. It just made me smile and it made me think about going to the beach. Today, I'm going to be making a spring tulip with all of these tulips that I got from Michael's. Now, there is a slew of these tulips, and I love it. So colorful, so springy. So let's get started. This is a 15-inch styrofoam wreath frame that I'm using, and I got this from Michael's as well. And I have my tulips here all laid out. And the idea that I had in my head was to start off with like a cream color, then work my way into the colors. I'm not taking the tulips off of the stems. I'm taking it all, or I'm attaching it all attached together. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to bend the stem into a little arch that follows the same arch as our little wreath frame there. And how I'm going to attach it is with this wire, floral wire. I was looking for the words. But there you go. This is just black floral wire. There is green floral wire out there. There's silver floral wire. It really doesn't matter what color you choose. Just, use what you have on hand. You're not going to see it anyways. So it's just going to be on the back. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start off with a simple wrap around, and then I'm just going to basically twist tie my first little tulip bundle there onto the wreath frame. And once I get my good twist on, I'm just going to pull down that tulip so it's nice and secure. And then with my left hand, I'm just going to hold it down and I'm just going to wrap it around a couple of times. I'm not going to cut that floral wire. We're going to keep the same floral wire going the whole time. So you are just going to wrap this around until about halfway down your stem. And again, don't cut your floral wire. We're going to grab another bunch. This time I'm using another bunch of these cream colored tulips. I'm going to bend the stem just to follow that arc again. And I'm going to just hold it in place with my left hand once I place it there. And again, I'm going to take that floral wire and I'm pulling a little bit, tight. You don't want those flowers to go anywhere. And I'm just going to wrap that around until about halfway of the new floral pick that you just added. So that's going to be halfway down to that new floral pick. And then I'm just going to repeat that pattern over and over again. Here is a white, green, and kind of a cream color one that I'm adding as well. And I'm doing the same process over and over again. So with my left hand, I'm securing it. With my right hand, I am wrapping that floral wire around. So again, don't forget when you're wrapping it around, wrap it until at least midway through the new floral pick that you put on there. You want everything to be kind of nice and secure. And now moving into the blues, wrapping it around. For this wreath, I used 2 bundles for each color. Now, I just so happened when I was at Michael's, these little bundles. So I'm in Canada, and I know the States was a little bit cheaper. I think in the States, at one point, they were $2.99 each. Now, up here in Canada, they ended up being, I think it was $3.49 each. So that wasn't too bad. Here you can see I'm kind of having trouble with my wire, it got caught. It happens. I just tied it together. And, just to show you guys, nothing really is 100% perfect sometimes on my channel. Things do go wrong sometimes. But here, I just fixed the problem. I tied it off and I started to do this again. So here I am. I'm just moving down with my colors. And I just had them all laying on my right-hand side, 2 of each bundle for for each color, I should say. And really, you can pick any single color that you want. You don't have to do a rainbow style. You can make it all red, all white, whatever you want. Here I'm starting to get towards the end. So what I'm doing is with the stem of the last 2 floral picks, I'm trying to push them into underneath the wire that I used for the white. So those are the starting ones that I used. And then I'm going to wrap around that wire like I always do, and I'm not going to wrap around the flowers, just the stems. So this part right at the end takes a little while longer because I don't want to wrap up everything. So again, I'm doing my last floral pick here, and I'm going to just kind of squeeze that in between the styrofoam wreath and the wire that I did for the first bundle. And that'll secure that in there as well. And then once I get that in place and I'm happy with my placement, I'm going to carefully wrap that floral wire around my last floral pick just to make sure that's all nice and secured. So all in all, how many colors did I do? I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I did 2 colors or 2 bundles of tulips for each, so that's 18 in total. Once I'm done wrapping it around, I'm just going to cut off the excess and I'm just going to wrap it around a couple of times, making sure I don't have those flowers underneath. And then I'm just going to feed it through some previous wraps, and then I'm just going to tie it off and then chop off the excess. So again, it was a total for this 15-inch wreath. Now mine are very tight together, so there's hardly any greenery showing. It's 18 in total. So that's 18 tulip bundles in total that I did. And once I'm finished securing everything, I'm just going to spend a little bit of time kind of fluffing it up and arranging it, making sure, everything fits the way that I want it to fit. And here you go. Here is the final wreath, all set, all colorful, ready for spring. And of course, nothing screams spring like a tulip wreath. What do you guys think about this? I have wanted to make this wreath for so long, and I'm so happy I finally did. I cannot wait to put it on my front door looking like this. Look at that. It's colorful, it's springy. It really just makes you smile. And of course, I made this wreath during winter and it was freezing cold outside, and you can kind of see in the door there was snow still on the ground. But I totally can't wait to have this hanging full time on my front door for the spring season. Materials list for today: a 14-inch wire wreath frame, 6 rolls of deco mesh, scissors, measuring tools, some glue sticks and glue gun, Chanel stems. I have some tubing, an Easter sign, and some Easter decorations that I may or may not use today. Let's see how it goes. And let's get started. So I'm going to first start off with my deco mesh rolls, and I'm going to cut them. So I have a pair of scissors and a measuring tool. Here I'm just straightening out the start of it. Now I use a cutting mat to do the measuring. You can totally use a ruler, that's totally fine. With my curly deco mesh, I usually do 7 inches. So you can measure out and cut at the 7-inch mark, and that's going to give you your first little piece of deco mesh. But here's a little idea. I have 7 inches right across my cutting mat. So a little tip for you, if you're doing the curly method and you have a lot of cuts to do, you can cut a piece of cardboard that's 7 inches, or like myself, my cutting mat is 7 inches. So all I do is I just roll and roll and roll until the roll is almost done, or for 20 times or something like that. And then I just cut off the excess. I keep holding down that deco mesh there so it doesn't fly apart. Grab those scissors and put it in between the deco mesh and the cutting mat or a piece of cardboard, whatever you're using, and then just flip it over to the other side. And once you finish cutting this side here, you have created all these wonderful pieces with just a couple of cuts. How amazing is that? Such a great little tip, eh? So here I am. I have made all of my cuts here. I'm just going to get rid of that excess, and then I just start separating all of my sheets together. So again, this is 7 inches of deco mesh that I have cut up, and of course I have all these wonderful colors: lavender, pink, lime green, yellow, blue. I'm going to cut those all as well. So here's the wreath ring we're going to be using, and there's sections. So there's 5 sections here for each wreath ring. And within each section, I'm going to do 5 bundles. So on an anchor, and then 5 bundles. So basically, for the total, you're going to need 144 7-inch pieces of deco mesh. Does that all make sense? So to start making my bundles, I cut chenille stems in half. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 4 pieces of that 7-inch deco mesh. Now, this is how I do my bundles. You can do it any other way. You can have 3 or 4 or 6 in there, as many as you want, but this is how I do mine. And then for the first piece, I'm just going to roll it up and slide it in between my 2 piece fingers, and then I'm just going to hold it in place. And then I'm going to roll up my second piece and do the exact same thing for the third piece and for the fourth piece as well. And I'm just going to hold them in my left hand, and then I have some fingers to roll it with my right hand. Now my chenille stem comes in, you're going to glide it along your fingers. Transfer the chenille stem to your left hand and the deco mesh to your right, and give it a good little twist. And there is the start of our little bundle. How about we do one more together? And again, it's your 4 pieces of your deco mesh and 1 chenille stem. Your first piece, just give it a good roll, slide that between your 2 fingers, and you work your way to your second, third, and fourth piece. Now, how tight you roll it is completely up to you. Obviously, the tighter the roll, the smaller the curl, the more defined curl, and the looser, it gets a little bit messy as well. But here you go, you take that chenille stem, fold it over, and then give it a good twist. Now you can kind of see how our deco mesh will be formed with those bundles. So I'm going to finish all of the rest here. So it's 36 bundles of 4 that I'm creating. And to attach it to our wreath, I have all my bundles here. Your wreath is going to go face down, and we're going to use the 2 center wires. But first, to create an anchor, we're going to use one of those cross wires. I just pointed that out. So you take your 2 pieces of chenille, and your crossbar and the 2 inner wires should be within those chenille stems. And then all you do is twist it around, and that's how you create your first anchor. And for the second one, you do the same procedure, and this time it's not on an anchor wire or crossbar. So you just put it on those 2 inside wires, give it a little twist, and then you can push it down. And again, like I said earlier, I do 1 bundle at the crossbar, and then in between the 2 crossbars, I do 5 bundles in total. So that's going to go around the entire wreath. And that's how I do it. Again, you don't have to do the exact same thing. You can experiment and do more or do less, but this is how I do mine. So here I am, I'm coming up to another crossbar. So I do the same thing like we did the first time around. I feed the chenille stem through the top and the bottom space, and I make sure that crossbar and the two inner wires are within that chenille stem, and then I just give it a good twist, and we've just created our second anchor for this wreath. There you go. So I've got my anchor, and then I've got my 5 bundles plus my other anchor, and now you can kind of see how it's all coming together and how all these bundles are taking over my desktop. But I'm going to finish everything, and I'm working here on my last couple of bundles that I'm putting in. This is the last one here. And of course, my favorite part is always once we turn it over to see the reveal of this wonderful wreath. I can't wait to see. Look at all those colors. I am so happy with how this wreath turned out. But there you go, a nice curly deco mesh wreath. And I'm going to add some tubing to it. Like I showed you before, I have some Easter eggs, a sign, and ribbon. So I'm just going to experiment and see what I want to add on here. But I know I want to use that tubing, so I'm going to cut that tubing up next, and here it is. I don't know the length it comes in the packaging, and I actually kind of just eyeball the tubing. So what I do is I just start off making little loops here and there, and then I cut it at a certain length once I'm happy with the size of the loops and the tubing. So I don't really measure anything, I just kind of pull it and then I cut it. Now here there's some kinks in the tubing, so that's where I'm going to cut it, and that's how I'm going to create another bundle of tubing. So I don't really measure, and I do like them being various sizes. So if you like, you can measure yours out to a couple of inches or more. It's all up to you. I'm one to kind of have it all over the place. So here's my little sign, and it has a little hole at the top, and I have these little pearls. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a little glue down, and I'm going to try to anyways. It rolled away on me, and add that little pearl to the top to cover it off. And then once I took a look at it, I was like, you know, it needs something else. So I just added a couple more pearls just around the flower just to kind of finish that off. So you hide the hole there. Then I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to take 2 big dabs of glue and 2 long chenille stems, and I'm just going to glue it down using my little handy dandy tool there. Add more glue on the top, let that all dry, and that's how we're going to attach that to the frame. As you can see, I had attached the sign to the frame already. I didn't capture that on video, I'm so sorry, but I did the same thing. I just flipped it over, attached it to the 2 center wires with that chenille stem. And here you see I'm just sporadically adding that tubing every now and then once I add the sign on, because I didn't want to put the tubing on and then put the sign on and then cover up the tubing. I love the look of the tubing, so I didn't want the sign to cover that up. That's the reason why I added the sign first. But here I am, I just putting on the final touches of that tubing. And again, I'm just wrapping it around whichever wires I want and seeing how it goes. So it's kind of an experiment as I go. And I'm loving how this all turned out with the tubing on there. It just adds a certain flair to it. So I have these eggs with the glitter, and I also have these matte pastel ones. So I'm kind of deciding which ones I'm going to go for. And I decide just to go with the matte color ones. And these are actually chalkboard eggs that I found at the dollar store. You can actually write with chalk on them. I thought they were a really cool idea. But most importantly, I mean, I love the colors of these, and I love how they're that matte color. So again, I'm just kind of sporadically gluing them down, making sure the 2 colors aren't side by side. But at the same time, I'm not overly obsessed with where they're going to go. I just kind of randomly place them down and finish that all off with the last couple of eggs. And our wreath is almost done. I wish it was this fast in real life. Oh my gosh. So there you go. There is our curly deco mesh wreath, all colorful and ready for Easter with my little sign, my little mesh tubing, and those amazing matte color eggs. I just love how this turned out, and I hope you did as well. If you liked today's video, why not give me a thumbs up and maybe a comment down below? Don't forget, subscribe to my channel so you can be notified every time I upload a new video. An 18-inch wire wreath frame is what I'm going to be using today, and I had a mini haul at the Dollar Tree, so I shopped around in their little tropical section. These are little coasters which I thought were really cute. You could totally use those for a wreath. There's these colorful headbands. You see the leis in the background as well. These are little umbrellas that you put in the drinks along with this pinwheel. I may not use everything today, but I just wanted to show you all the stuff that you can get at the Dollar Tree to create your own little Aloha lei wreath. Look at these little flip-flops. Hello, summer! And of course, that pink flamingo. I'm going to be using all of these today along with these leaves that I got from Amazon. I got these a little while back, and I'm going to create a nice aloha tropical wreath full of color using those leis. And here is the lei. It comes one in a package, and all I'm going to do is I wanted to untie these, but I was afraid that everything would fall apart. So what I decided to try, and this was fully kind of me experimenting in my studio as always, they have these little straws that separate the little flowers. So all I'm doing is I'm taking my scissors and carefully, I don't want to cut the string that's inside that straw, but I am going to take that little piece of plastic out, and then I'm not going to cut it just yet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use my hot glue to glue down that string at the end of the flower. Before I cut it, I don't want to cut it first because I don't want to have everything fall off. So I'm just going to make sure that that hardens just a little bit, lay it flat just on its back, and then just make sure that fully dries before I do anything else. After it's kind of semi-dry, I move it off to the side and I start working on my other leis. In total, I had 8 leis, but I used 7. And you'll see how full it got. I thought it was really great. I didn't feel the need to add the 8th one. 7 was perfect. So here I am just continuing gluing down those strings right onto the petals of the lei, just making sure it hardens before I do anything. Because again, I don't want those to come apart. And once they're all dry and I have got all 8 all glued down, I am just going to make sure that I cut it without cutting any of the glue off, because we want to keep the glue there as well. And I'm just going to cut that string. And once we cut that string, it's going to create a nice long garland of that lei. Again, you don't have to cut it if you don't want to. You can keep it together and wrap it around. I just wanted to cut it just to see if I can get more out of those 8 leis rather than having to buy 16 if I doubled it up. If that makes sense to you guys. But I keep cutting those garlands, and once I've cut all of them, I'm going to start off using this blue color. And really, it's really simple. All I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the end of that lei, and then I'm just going to use some hot glue. And I did use quite a bit because I wanted to make sure that it was going to stick to that wire frame. And then I just stick it right onto that frame. Of course, watch out for that hot glue. I burned myself several times today doing this. I lost my little silicone tool that I use. I couldn't find it. I don't know where I put it. I know it's somewhere here in my studio, but I lost it somewhere and I want to find it again. But anyways, all I'm doing is I'm wrapping that lei around. Once the glue settled with the first little attachment, I'm going to wrap it around, and I'm pushing it fairly close to each other, and I'm trying to fluff up those little petals just to kind of, they can hide that plastic white little straw thing that separates. I don't even know what you're going to call it. That separates our lei flowers. And I'm just wrapping it around. Nothing really fancy, just wrapping it around. I'm not pulling it too tight or it's too loose. And then right at the very end, I'm going to add some more hot glue and then glue it down on one of the wires from our wire wreath frame. And you can kind of see from here, It's looking nice and fluffy. It's not too crowded. It's not too loose. It's kind of hiding most of those straws, and I'm very happy about how it came out, and you can kind of see what it looks like here. Moving on to my second lei, this is kind of a bright yellow. It just lights up the screen, and I just loved how bright this was. All I'm going to do is the same that I did with the blue. I'm going to add a little hot glue right at the very end of the garland, attach that to the piece of metal, and then once that's all nice and secured, I'm going to start wrapping that lei all the way around. And again, I'm pretty careful with these because I don't want them to fall apart, number one, and I don't want to have to pick up all these florals and straws if it did come apart. And obviously you don't want it to come apart on your wreath either. So I'm pretty careful, I'm pretty gentle. I'm not pulling it too tight or pulling it too hard. I'm just kind of rolling around with it. And you'll see here I'm coming at the end once more, and I'm just going to hot glue that down right in place on that wire wreath frame. And then I have my first of many colors attached to my wreath frame. I just want to flip it over here and show you guys how full it looks once you add just 2 of them on there. You can't see those straws. It looks full. And then, of course, we have tons of room to add more garland, more leis, and just make it nice and bright and colorful. You can see here I've got 4 of them on, and it's pretty much covering just a little over half of that wreath. And then I'm just going to keep continuing on until I put my last lei on there, and we are all done making our base. Again, I used 7 of the leis from the Dollar Tree to make this. And if you've been watching my channel for a while, you know that I do what I call, quote unquote, a dry run with all of my wreaths. So I take all of the items that I want to put on the wreath, and I just kind of play around with it. These are little tropical florals I had in my stash as well from the Dollar Tree. It was on a vine, and I'm just going to use those instead of all of the flowers. And once I finish my dry run and I'm happy with the placement of everything, I'm just going to use that hot glue gun until there's no tomorrow, gluing everything down. And of course, we need that flamingo to be the center piece here, the focal point. And I just love that floral yellow, orange, pinks, just screams tropical, screams summer, and I just love how this turned out. There we go, our final product of our Aloha tropical wreath using the leis and the other products from the Dollar Tree. I didn't use everything that I showed you right in the beginning, but you can pick and choose and add whatever you want on there. Those flip-flops would be so cool on here. Even if you find like a tropical hat, that would be really cool as well, adding it to your wreath. I am using this 14-inch wire wreath frame that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I have 3 colors of bandanas, red, blue, and white, and I got these from the Dollar Tree as well, and these little wooden stars that I collected from the Dollarama, and white acrylic paint, and that is everything that I used to create this bandana wreath. I'm going to start off with my bandanas and cutting them. And these bandanas, they're 20-inch by 20-inch, and they come in packages of 2. So in total, I used 6 of each color. So that's 3 packages of 2, which creates the 6. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut each bandana in half. And I'm just going to use that center seam, that fold line there as a guide. I'm going to take my scissors and I'm just going to cut each one in half. So they result in a 10-inch by a 20-inch rectangle for the white. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing for the red, just cutting it down right the middle. And lastly, I'm going to do the exact same thing for all of my bandanas in the blue color as well. Once they're all cut, I'm just going to put them to the side. And here is my 14-inch wire wreath frame, and I'm going to be using the entire width of the frame today. all I'm going to do is take my 10 by 20 rectangle, fold it in half. I'm going to create a little loop. You'll see the loop right there at the end with my fabric, and then I'm going to wrap that right around and push the other portion through that loop. And that's going to create our little white stripe for our USA Patriotic bandana wreath. And I'm going to do the exact same thing with the red. Going to grab the middle, fold it in half. I'm going to create that loop, wrap that all the way around our wreath frame, and then feed the other end through the loop and give it just a couple of good pulls just to make sure it's nice and tight. And of course, you don't have to use a wire wreath frame for this. You can use one of those styrofoam frames as well. I just had the wire wreath frame laying around, so I thought, why not? And now I'm going to alternate between the red and the white, folding it in half, and then tying it on to my wreath frame. A nice, easy, simple DIY to create a great patriotic wreath. I loved how this turned out, and you'll get to see that in about 5 minutes, right at the very end. But I'm just alternating between the red and the white. I'm folding it, looping it, and then tying it, and then just kind of moving it around to where I want to place it. And of course, once I'm done placing all my red and white bandanas, I'm going to move on and create my blue portion. So about 2/3 of the wreath is the red and white. So to create the red and white stripes of the USA flag. And now I'm just going to do the exact same procedure, folding it in half, creating a loop, and then tying that onto the wreath frame. And I'm going to use all of my blue bandanas now. And this is going to create that little rectangle of blue that's on the flag. It's going to represent that anyways. It's not a rectangle, but it'll represent it anyways. And I just continue adding on that blue. And I just love the colors of these. They're so vibrant. It's amazing. And doing my last couple of loops and ties. And I am finished creating my red, white, and blue wreath. How pretty does that look? I just love how this turned out. I couldn't stop touching it. I just loved it. And to add the stars, I found these little wooden stars. And I got these at the Dollarama, which is a dollar store here in Canada. But I have seen something similar in the Dollar Tree. So you can totally get those at the Dollar Tree. And since it's a natural wood color, I wanted the stars to actually be white. I'm just going to use white acrylic paint to paint those stars. And what I'm going to do is just add a very small dollop of hot glue and glue that down. This is just wax paper that I have down, such that it's a little bit easier to paint those stars. So I'm going to glue these all down. And when I did take them off, there was a little bit of wax paper left over, but it doesn't matter because that's the back side and that's attached to the blue portion. And you really didn't see the back side afterwards anyways. And then I just started painting each star with that white acrylic paint. And you see they're not moving, they're glued down. So it's a lot easier and a lot less messy actually to do this than it is to hold it in your hand and paint it. Now, this did take me a couple of coats. So the first coat was kind of like a primer, and then I added a second coat, and then I let it all completely dry. And I'm going to bring back my wreath again. It's all finished. It's all ready to go. And then my stars are all dry now. And here they are, nice and white, exactly how I wanted them. And all I'm going to do is flip it over to the back side, add some hot glue down, and then I'm just going to stick that on the blue portion. I'm going to hold it for a bit just to make sure it's dry, make sure it's attached. And then I'm going to start adding the rest of my stars onto my wreath. I just love the contrast of those stars, the white stars against the blue. They really, really popped on this wreath. I was really so happy with it. And there you go. My stars are all down. My wreath is all completed. I have my red and white stripes. I have my blue. I have my white stars. What a great way and what a great representation of the US flag. A great Dollar Tree bandana patriotic wreath. I'm starting off with my wreath board, and I'm using gray poly mesh, this beige poly mesh, and this tricolor poly mesh as well. I'm adding this centerpiece for my flower, and I'm attaching everything using cable ties, along with cutting utensils and a ruler. These are the materials that I'm going to be using today. Starting off with my wreath board. This is a small wreath board, and it is numbered, so you have 1, 2, 3, and 4 rows of circles. And the outside row today we're not going to be using, but I'm going to be starting in row number 2, and then 3, and then 4. But first, I'm going to attach my cable ties into row number 2. And all you're going to do is you're going to feed it in one end, and then you're going to feed it through the other end, click it together, and that's going to create a little loop. Now you don't want to close that loop off. You have to feed your mesh through there. So you want to keep that loop nice and open. And then I'm just going to move on to the next 2 close circles or openings. I'm going to feed that cable tie through until I hear it click a couple of times and create that loop. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do those close together holes first, and then I'm going to come in and fill in the rest of the holes. So there's ones in between, and we're going to fill those spacers as well with our cable ties. Now you don't have to do the way that I did it. I like to do the ones closer together, and then I come around and I just fill in everything else. If you want to do it all at once, that's totally fine by you. Just as long as all of those holes are filled with our cable ties, flip it over just to make sure to check your work, and we have everything filled on our second row. Now I'm going to work on my third and fourth row, filling in all the cable ties, and I'm almost done filling everything in. And I will show you in just a second what it looks like on the other side after I fill it all in. So again, you don't want to close those cable ties. Keep them nice and open. When you see on the other side, all of my holes are filled with cable ties. And now we're ready to cut our mesh so we can make that petal. For this, I'm using poly mesh, and I am cutting these at 10 inches in length. So we have a 10-inch wide poly mesh, and we're cutting in 10-inch lengths. Now for this particular wreath on the small board, I am using 24 pieces of this solid gray color. And I will also be cutting the multicolored one 16 pieces at 10-inch lengths and 8 pieces of this beige one at 10-inch lengths. So in total, there's 48 pieces at our 10-inch length. And to create our petal, we have one side that's manufactured edged and one is a cut end. So what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to turn it around to make it a diamond shape. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it in half, just like you fold a napkin in half to create a little triangle. And with that, I'm going to fold that triangle one more time just to find my center. So I'm going to fold it over. I'm going to push down a little bit just in that one little corner, just to show me where my center is. Then I'm going to flip one corner towards the center, overlapping the center just a little bit. And then we'll take the other corner and turn it towards the center, overlapping that a bit. And you can see it makes like a little envelope shape. So you've got your tabs, then you just roll it in to the center point, take your other, roll it in as well, and you're going to create those little curls there with your point. And then at the very end, we're going to squish it all together, and that's going to create our first petal. And what we'll do is we will attach this to our wreath board in between one of our cable ties that we have open. So you're just going to feed it in, leave a little bit of space there, and then you're going to pull it nice and tight to close that off. And once you've got it nice and secured, I'm just going to take my wire cutters and cut the excess off. So there we have it. Our first petal is attached, and we're ready to make more. Let's go through it a second time. All you're going to do is you're going to turn your square into a diamond. take that bottom point, match it up to the top point to create a little triangle. Then we're going to fold the triangle in half again to create another triangle, and that's going to find our center point. And all I do with our center point is I just push down a little bit, and that creates a fold. And then when I unfold it, I know where my center mark is. I'm going to bring that one corner towards the center with a little bit of an overlap. I'm going to bring the bottom corner up to overlap it again. And then I'm just going to fold down or roll down the edges one more time to create those little curls. And then you just squish right down at the end. And that's going to create our second petal. And all I do is I just attach it to the wreath board using those cable ties that we've already placed. Place it in there with a little bit of an overlap. Then you're going to pull it nice and tight and then cut using your scissors. And I'm just going to repeat the same process over and over again, creating all those wonderful and beautiful petals all around that second row, just filling it up with this petals. I just love this method. And of course, this method comes from Lori from Unique in the Creek. And here we go. Our first row is all done with our gray. Now we're going to move on to that second row, which is all empty. And now we're just going to fill that in with the multicolored mesh. So again, I'm going to use the same procedures over and over again, folding, rolling, and creating those petals using Lori's method from Unique in the Creek to create this beautiful flower petal wreath for fall. And I know the gray is not a typical fall color, but I wanted something a little bit different. And mixed with the solid beige and then of course this checkered pattern, I just love how this came out, and I hope you did as well. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you know that I do like, a little bit of the outside of the box, so I wanted to try something new. And with that, I have finished my second row of petals, and now I'm going to work on my final row using the same method created by Lori and attaching those petals right on there. And of course, the beauty part of this is you can take the same method and same procedure and use any color of deco mesh that you want to create your petals. And there we go. We are all done. Now it is time to work on our little centerpiece. And this is just a flower centerpiece that I got offline, or online, I should say, where I'm attaching a pipe cleaner with a little bit of hot glue. And I'm just going to pour some more hot glue on there to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. And then once that's all done, I'm just going to put it to the side and let it dry. And now that our glue is dry, I would love it if you're having a good time today and enjoy what I'm doing here. I would love it if you hit that subscribe button and that notification bell. We are all done with letting the glue dry. Now it's time to attach it to the back of our wreath board. I'm just going to use two available holes that are adjacent to each other. I'm going to feed that pipe cleaner through, and then I'm just going to give it a couple of really good twists to make sure it's nice and secured in there. Cut off the excess, and what I like to do is just add a little dollop of hot glue to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. And once we have it flipped over, we fluff it up a little bit, and we are all done with our fall flower wreath. What do you guys think of it? Let me know in the comments down below if you love it, or if you're not too fond of the colors. That I'm going to be using today are these square felt pads, and this is a 14-inch styrofoam wreath frame that I'm going to be using. So now that we have that all over and done with, let's hop right to the tutorial and get started. Okay, I have my colorful felt laid out, and these felt sheets are about 6 inches by 6 inches square. So what I'm going to be doing is at the 3-inch mark, cutting these in half and then basically cutting them in quarters. So I'm getting 4 pieces out of one sheet. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to take a couple of pieces, and I don't measure anything. I'm just going to eyeball it. I'm going to be cutting 1.5 million squares. So I'm just going to eyeball this rather than measuring everything. And really, in the end, it doesn't really matter that it's perfectly square or not. Unless you're really obsessed about it, you know, then by all means measure up. But all I'm doing is I'm cutting each square into quarters and making little piles of all my colorful felt. And this is the felt package that I found at the local dollar store here. It's a Dollarama. They've got all these beautiful colors in there. The only colors that I'm not using are the white and the black. So now I've cut them into quarters. I am going to now cut them down even more. So it's pretty much I'm cutting them into eighths. So I've got these really little squares. They're about 1 inch by 1 inch, 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches, something like that. And this is what I'm going to be using for my wreath. And I'm just going to go through all these little piles and create even smaller piles of even smaller pieces of felt. I'm not going to lie, it was a little time consuming, but you will see in the end, this is totally worth it. So I have my little piles going on here, and I'm cutting everything up into those really small squares. And I have my little wreath, so here I am with my wreath ring, and all I'm going to do is put a little dab of glue in each corner and then apply it down onto the wreath form. And this is basically almost like, you know, like fish scales? It's almost like that sort of pattern that I'm going for, but not so perfect. So it's going to be a little bit messy, it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to be colorful. That is what I'm aiming for here. So my squares aren't cut perfectly. That's totally fine by me. That's totally cool. That's half the fun of it, if you ask me. And of course, all these wonderful colors that I'm using, the greens, the yellows, the orange, red, pink, and blue. It is just coming together so wonderfully. I'm so happy. Even with the first couple of rows that you see here, I am so happy with how this is coming together. And you can see I am just basically alternating the colors and overlapping the previous line of felt triangles. And I just keep going with that. And you can kind of see it happening now, seeing it come together a little bit as I keep going and adding on more triangles. So there it is right now. Maybe if I cover it up, you can kind of see what's going on and where I'm going to go with the rest of the wreath. So I'm just going to continue this all the way around, and you can see how colorful, how fun, how birthday-ish this is. Is that even a word, birthday-ish? You know what, I'm going to make it a word from now on. Birthday-ish. But I'm putting on my last couple of triangles here. You can kind of see, you know, I started off with these perfect piles, and now it's just all the colors, everything is all over the place, but it's kind of fun. And putting on my last row here, the first row I'm just tilting over, you can see that, and I'm placing my last row just underneath that first row. And I'm just kind of deciding which colors need to go where and how to finish this off. And I try not to add too much at the end. And I think once I put that down, nope, I see something else. So I'm like, oh, I'm just going to grab a little triangle here. And this one is going to be the last one to cover up the entire wreath so we don't see that green underneath anymore. And there you have it. My beautiful, colorful, felt, fun birthday wreath. Of course, as I was looking at it, I was like, you know what? I wonder if this needs something else. It's colorful, it's fun, it's felty, I love it, but I think it needs just one more thing. So I was looking around and I had this colorful package of pipe cleaners. At this point, I didn't know where I was going to go with it. I just took all the pipe cleaners out, I just started looking at them, and then something said twirl them. So I didn't know where I was going with it. I was kind of seeing, at this point, what can I do with this, with all of these twirls? And then I thought, you know what? I'm just going to twirl and twirl and twirl and twirl until an idea comes up in my head that I like or that I want to try. And that's the beauty part of crafting, and that's why I love wreath making and crafting. So here's my first idea, is to glue all of these onto a piece of felt, but I burned myself twice already in this short little time. Then I tried doing it with the pen, and then I'm going to add another one on here. I burned myself again. So it was one burn after another, and this idea did not work. It did not pan out. Again, there I am burning my fingers. So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to start twisting again until I come up with another idea. So here we go, twisting and more twisting. Then I came up with this idea. Why don't I just group them together? They are made of wire after all. They're pipe cleaners and they're meant to twist around. So all I did was I grouped a whole bunch of them. And then once I got a couple, I think about 5 or 6, I decided I'm just going to twist the ends of them just to kind of tie them all together. And then I'm like, you know what? Why don't I just make a huge kind of curly pipe cleaner bow thing that I can put on? So what I do is basically every maybe 3rd or 4th pipe cleaner that I put on, I just twist it around, and I created this really strong base all of a sudden. And I just started adding these all on, and I decided, you know what? I'm going to use all these curly cues on here. I want it big, I want it fun, I want it colorful. So I just started adding on, and it was just, you know what? It totally made me smile. I just thought this was so fun, so cool, and I was so happy with it. So I kept going with it until I had my last piece on there. And of course my last piece is on there. I just love how this turned out. It is so bouncy, it's so fun, and it looked great. So I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna bend at a 90-degree angle that center core that I created, and I'm gonna throw a whole bunch of hot glue down right there at the bottom, and then I'm gonna glue that right onto my felt wreath. And what I do is I do press it down and I do hold it there for quite a while just to make sure the glue sets. I mean, hot glue does set pretty quickly. And once it's all set, then I can play around with it, opening it up a little bit and spreading those curly cues all out. Look how fun this is. Very birthday-ish. I brought that word back. But there you have it. Nice and easy, a quick little fun addition. I mean, you could do this little curly cue for any wreath, really, or anything, presents. But here is our final wreath, colorful, felty, birthday-ish, and a lot of fun. I had so much fun making this today. Green phone wreath form and some electrical tape, and I got these at the dollar store. And I had this idea when I saw the electrical tape, and I thought, why don't I just give it a try? So I threw my camera on, and I thought, let's wrap this wreath form with electrical tape and see what it looks like. So all I'm doing is I am just wrapping that all the way around, overlapping it, making sure none of the green shows. And as soon as I started doing this, I really loved the effect and how this looked. So I just kept wrapping and wrapping and wrapping all the way around, as you can see right here. And it kind of reminds me of Maleficent. Have you seen the movie with Angelina Jolie? Her headpiece that she wears over her horns? I thought it looked really cool after I got it all done and over with. I was like, oh, it looks exactly like that. So I was really happy with the results. And when I was done, I just kind of turned it over to make sure all the green was gone, and I noticed a couple of pieces where the green shows through. And all I did was I took a little bit of tape and I just covered that green, and nobody really knows or notices. That's the beauty part of this electrical tape. I just loved working with it. It was so quick, so easy, and it came out looking fantastic. What do you guys think of it? I loved it. And I also had a bouquet here with the black roses and a green glitter spider. So I thought I'm just going to make a little bouquet at the bottom there with the leaves and the spider and the roses. And first I'm just going to cut off those little nubs at the bottom, just such that the flowers lay a little bit flatter on the wreath. And here I go with my first flower. I'm just hot gluing it down, holding it in place for a bit. And then I'm just going to let that dry, and I'm going to continue on and attach the other 3 flowers. So again, this is a really quick, really simple wreath. I think everything was done in less than 15 minutes from start to finish. I know the video is only about 3 minutes long, but it was really quick to do. That electrical tape worked wonders, and I was so happy with it. And look how it looks with those flowers. So I thought a little bit more, so I had a little black leaf, and I'm just going to attach that on there right at the very end, just to give it a little more zhuzh. We all like just a little more zhuzh, don't we? And I'm figuring out where I'm going to put that spider, attach that down, and voila! I have a really cool, really quick, simple Halloween wreath. I love it, and I hope you love it just as much as I do. I think it came out great. What do you think? I'm starting off using a Dollar Tree green wreath form, some gray yarn, and some felt that I got from the Dollarama. And pretty much that's everything that I'm going to be using today. The red and black felt I should include is what I'm going to work with today. Starting off, I'm going to take my wreath form, I'm going to lay down a little bead of glue and attach one end of my yarn in the glue so it's attached. And then I'm going to wrap it around the entire wreath frame. And normally what I do is I do 2 rounds with my right hand, and then I just hold it in place with my left. I'm pulling it a little bit tight, but not too tight. It's a little bit taut, but not too tight. I want to make sure that it's wrapped around, but not too tight. And I'm going to go all the way around the wreath, just wrapping it around over and over again. And then at the very end, do another bead of glue, and I'm going to do another couple of wraps to end it off, making sure that yarn goes through the glue and holds in place. I'm just going to hold it there for a bit. Once it's dry, I'm going to cut the excess off, and then we have our base wreath all ready to go. In order to make our poppy, I'm going to cut my squares into 4 cubes. So I'm cutting them in half, and then I'm cutting them in half again. So I'm cutting them in quarters. And I'm not really measuring, I'm just kind of eyeballing it. They don't have to be the exact same size, but roughly the same size is good. And once I've cut my cubes, I'm going to fold them in half, and I'm going to create a little circle. So you fold it in half again, and then cut a little arch. Make sure that the folds are at the bottom and left-hand side like I've shown. And then once you open it up, you've got your little circle, and I'm going to cut right down the center, just halfway through the circle. Again, folding it into a little cube, cutting an arch, opening it up, and then giving it another cut right down the center. For this, I have 4 piles, and in each pile I have different amounts. So the first pile I have 5, 4, and 3, and then I have 1, but the one that I have is not cut. So that single one is not cut, but the rest of them are cut down the middle. And what I'm going to do is start off with the one that's not cut, and that's going to be the base of our poppy. And what I will do is I will just add a little bead of glue to all the ones that we've cut so far. Just a little line of glue. It doesn't have to be too much glue. And then I'm just going to fold over, creating a little cone. So it's like a little disc, a little dish, if you will. It's not too much of a cone, but just a little bit. And I'm going to do that for each one of our cut pieces. I'm just going to put the glue down, hold it in place, and create my little discs. And I'm going to do that for each of my piles. And once my piles are all done, I'm going to take that singular one, add a little dab of glue right on the outside, take one of my little discs and add that right there. And glue it down, hold it for a little bit to make sure it's nice and secure. Once that's secure, I'm going to add another dab of glue and work on the outside, adding my petals. So I have 5 petals in total for the outside, 4 for the middle layer, and 3 for my top layer all together. And I'm just going to go around and glue all of those together. As you see, I'm doing right here. So my first row is done. Time for my second row. This time I'm just going to overlap those petals and I'm going to attach it the exact same way. And then I'm going to fill it in with the 3 last petals right at the top. And there you go. We have our outside of the poppy and the poppy petals all finished. To create the black inside of the poppy, I'm just going to cut little strips, and I don't measure, I just do little strips like you see here of black felt. I'm going to pile them all together, and then once they're together, I'm just going to take my scissors and chop them into wee little squares. And I'm going to create a large pile of these little guys you can see there, and those are going to go right in the center. So all I do is I take a whole bunch of glue, put it right in the center of my poppy, and then I'm going to add those little black cubes right in the center. And then once they're all there, I'm going to squish it down and let that fully dry. Once it's all dry, it's ready to attach to our wreath. And here's our wreath that we just created with the yarn. I'm going to throw a little bit of hot glue down and add my poppy right onto the wreath. A really nice, simple, easy to do poppy wreath for Remembrance Day today. What I am going to be using today is almost everything here. I have this little wood block. I have the embroidery hoop wreath. I have some of these baubles that I got from the dollar store, some lights, this awesome looking deer ornament that I got from the Dollar Tree. I have these little sticks that are kind of goldy glitter and a whole bunch of gold glitter baubles. So let's get to it. I'm starting off with my little wood base, and it's about 4 1/4 by 4 1/4 square. And I'm using the inside hoop of the embroidery wreath, and that's about 14 inches. And I'm just kind of figuring out right now where I want to glue this down. And I think I'm just going to glue it in the back part because I want the deer to go right in the front. And I'm using no nails glue. I'm going to throw a little dab on there. And then I'm going to throw a couple of dabs of hot glue just to make sure it holds. And then I'm just going to push it down, clean it up a little bit. And then once that all happens, I'm going to let it dry completely. And while that is drying, I have my deer ornament, and I already love this clear, but I am going to use some white acrylic paint to do a base coat on the deer. Now, funny story about the deer. I did the white base coat and then I painted it all gold because I wanted this gold and black theme. And you'll see in the video later on, I kind of put the gold deer down and it didn't really work. So I'm basically primed it here. Once I finished priming it, I let that completely dry, kind of throw it off to the side, and then I move on. Now that my glue is all dry on my wood, I am going to start painting the stand and the circle all black. Now again, these are the colors I'm choosing today. If you wish to use different colors, that is totally okay. You don't have to follow exactly what I do. I just wanted to create this black and gold inspired Scandinavian standing wreath. I thought it would have been so cool in the black and the gold. And all I'm doing is I'm just painting everything, the hoop, the base, the sides of the base, and the bottom I just let it be because nobody's going to see the bottom, so I don't paint that. And once I get it all done, I'm just going to put that to the side, and my deer is going to dry, and the black paint on the base will all dry. And then in the meantime, I'll do something else. So here is my deer. I painted it gold. It came out pretty good, but later on, I didn't actually film it, but I did paint it black. And now it's time for our lights. These are just fairy lights. You can see them all over at the dollar stores, even when, the holiday season isn't here. So these ones just take 2 AA batteries. I'm going to throw them in, and before I attach it all, I want to make sure they work. And boom, they do work. Yay! So now I'm going to try to decide, after I unravel it and untangle it, I'm going to decide where I want my little battery pack. I thought maybe at the back I'll put it here, underneath, because I've done that before in a previous project. I thought maybe I'll just put it on the top here, because the baubles will cover it anyways. And then finally I decide, you know what? No, I don't like any of that. I'm going to put it at the bottom. And once I decide that, I'm just going to throw some hot glue on the bottom of that little battery pack, and then I'm going to attach it in the little alcove underneath, so it's all nice and hidden. And that thick cord that comes right out of the battery pack was creating a little bit of unevenness with the stand. So what I decided to do was just take some hot glue, and I'm going to wrap the thick part of the cord just underneath, such that it's all hidden. It's not going to wobble the stand at all. And then the only part that's going to stick out is the actual very thin wire where the fairy lights are. So I was much happier with that rather than having that thick cord pop out. And once I get that all down and in place, I'm just going to let that all dry for a bit. I am all dry with the glue, and now what I'm going to do is just to kind of anchor it, I'm going to wrap it around that one section that meets the base. That way, just make sure it's there and in place, not going to go anywhere. And then I'm just going to put a very small dab of hot glue down. My gold baubles are going to cover all of that, so I'm not really worried about that showing. Now the lights, because I didn't choose to bring my bubbles all the way around the hoop, my lights are just kind of twisted around. I try to make the stripes, I guess, as even as possible when I'm doing this, because it is going to be exposed. You do see it. But once you see it at the end, it doesn't really look that bad at all. I actually kind of like the look of it. If it was a gold strand, I would have been so much happier because everything would have matched. But I do have a little bit left over when I get to the bottom here. You'll see in a moment. I'm actually just going to glue it down, hold that in place as well. And then I'm just going to bring that little extra over to the other side underneath where I started and wrap it around again, just to give it a little bit more lights on that one side, because that is the one side where all the baubles are going to go. So I thought it would be kind of cool if I had extra lights there and it was extra bright shining through those baubles. So I'm just going to twist that around, and at the end, put a little more hot glue down. My battery pack is all good to go. Let's test it. Yay, we have lights. These are the packs of ornaments that I got from the Dollar Tree. They're different sizes, they're different textures. I have glitter, I have matte. So I wanted different sizes, different colors, different textures. That's going to add a lot of interest to your piece. So when you're shopping, shop for different color or different sizes, textures. And then I take those little hook loops off the top. Now for the first one to glue down, and I always get nervous when I start something like this. So if you get nervous, don't worry, you're not alone. I always want to make sure it looks good. So when I do something like this, I do just kind of take my time with this. It's all sped up right now, but I do take my time with it. I kind of figure out where I'm going to go with all of this, take my time, think about it, and then I start gluing it all down. I mean, hot glue can be removed, sometimes not so easily, sometimes you do damage your project, but it can be corrected. But I just want to make sure I don't have to unglue everything. And there we go, I'm just putting them together. I'm starting with a couple of bigger ones, adding some small ones as I go. Every now and then I pick up the stand, kind of take a look at it at a different angle, see where I should go next. And here I am just kind of taking a look at it, figuring out where everything's going to go. And I do start off with the larger pieces, cluster it all together, and then towards the end I use the smaller pieces, kind of taper it off a little bit. And adding some final pieces down. Here is where I'm kind of figuring out where and what I want to do next. I put the deer on, and as you can see, the gold deer doesn't really do it justice. So I'm kind of contemplating whether I should add some more gold. I use these kind of gold glittery icicles, they're ornaments actually. And I'm trying to figure out where I want to put them, what I want to do with them. I thought maybe sticking them within the cluster would be cool, but I didn't end up really liking that. And I thought, oh, maybe I'll just hang them up over here off center a little bit. And then I took a look at it and I was like, I don't really like that. I tried the baubles at the bottom again. I'm going to bring the deer back in a second. So this is my whole process, is I'm just kind of fiddling around with everything. And before I even glue anything down, I try to figure out what I want to do. So here's the deer. It kind of gets lost in the gold. It doesn't match with the gold. So this is kind of when I decided I'm going to paint that deer. But here's my baubles, all done, all attached. I'm so happy about it. And there's that painted deer that I just painted. It's a matte black. So it was the same deer. I just went back with black acrylic paint, painted it all. And now I'm just going to take my hot glue and I'm going to attach that to the base. And once I do that and let it dry, we are all done with our Scandinavian inspired standing wreath. Here it is in all its glory. I did a little setup for it. I just love how this turned out. I am so happy with the black and the gold. I'm so excited that I painted that deer black and everything worked out in the end. I know black is not for everybody during the holidays, but I love this black and gold combo, especially at night. As you can see here, when the lights are on, it just looks so beautiful. And I'm so happy with it. So glittery, so festive, so much fun, and a little bit of twinkle as well.